If you are an independent party voter here in California, well, you have an issue that started in 2016. You should know about a big issue from the 2016 election that is carrying over to next year's primary. Joining us to talk more about this and how California's semi-closed primary could be fixed is Legal Eagle Chad Peace. Good morning, Chad. Let's just set it up. Explain the issue at hand that started in 2016.
It started a little bit earlier. I think in 2016 it was no secret. There's coverage from the LA Times to the New York Times about the massive voter confusion that happened because of our semi-closed presidential primary.
Let me explain what a semi-closed primary is.
Well, semi-closed basically means the parties determine the rules. So if the parties would give you the privilege of voting in a taxpayer-funded primary, then you can vote in their primary. So as it relates to independent voters, they have to actively request the ballot of a party that chooses to allow voters to participate. If that sounds confusing, it is. In fact, 82%, somewhere around there, of independent voters returned a ballot last presidential primary that had no presidential candidate on it.
Simply because out of ballot confusion.
Well, yeah, it's very confusing.
How many independent voters? I see California is such a blue state. Are there that many people that are independent voters here?
It is by far the fastest growing segment of the electorate. It's now well over 5 million, about 6 million voters now. And it's an expression of voters saying that they don't want to participate on either side of the aisle and want to vote unencumbered. And we need to find a way to include them in the process and not erect barriers between.
All right, well, you bring up, what's your solution?
Well, the Independent Voter Project offered a simple solution. And when I say simple, you have to think about all the dynamics, the legal constructs you have to work in, the political dynamics that you have 50 states running a presidential process. We said most simply, look, taxpayers are funding the presidential election. We should make it as easy as possible for any voter who, these are voters that took the step to register to vote.
Okay.
And we have all this talk about trying to get people engaged. Well, how about those 5 to 6 million voters? Why don't you simply give them a default ballot instead of it being blank? Put everybody on there, and it's a public election ballot. So you have a Democratic ballot, a Republican ballot, and then another ballot that's a public ballot that anybody can participate on. So,
true or false? In most elections, in most states, an independent candidate has absolutely no chance of winning.
Well, in most states, in California, an independent can't even get on the primary election ballot. So it's part of the rules that are designed to kind of insulate both sides from competition. By the time you get to the general election, the narrative has been framed, the credible candidates have already been decided, and then you have 3 or 4 independents plus third parties all competing for the first time in a general election when the dialogue and all the voters have been told, well, these are the credible candidates that actually have a chance to win. California
is such a blue state. It's not even a blue state, it's a royal blue state. And the rules seem to be configured to keep it royal blue. Mm-hmm. Aren't you kind of just whistling into the wind here a little bit as far as trying to affect change? Because there's no chance that the powers that be are going to let you tweak the system.
Well, yes and no. I think representation is supposed to be about representing the community and not a color, right? Not a T-shirt. So when I mean T-shirt, red or blue, right? It's supposed to represent everybody. Actually, California made one of the most significant advances in election reform by creating nonpartisan statewide primaries back in 2010. Now, that isn't a perfect solution, that creates a perfect process, but reform can happen. And if you look across the country, there's states like Maine that just adopted a new ranked choice voting system. There's states looking into nonpartisan primaries. At the voter level, when you step outside the political dialogue, that's really a lot of, it's a very partisan dialogue of following the national narrative of the two sides. There's a sentiment amongst voters, and it doesn't matter whether you're liberal, conservative, somewhere in the middle, or somewhere, on the far right or left of those. There's a sentiment across the country that's saying the system is fundamentally broken, and what the cause is that we don't have representatives that are actually speaking to the voters. I think there's an opportunity in California. It starts with the public awareness, and then it also starts with educating the legislators to step outside the lens of looking at elections as how do we change the competition between the red and the blue, and say, How about we look at the election of increasing the competition so it includes everybody?
All right, so independent voters sitting and watching say, yeah, I agree with everything Chad's saying. How do I get my voice behind his to maybe affect a little change? What's your message to the people out there who want to join your wagon?
Well, I think there's a couple things they can do. One, go to independentvoterproject.org. See the reforms that we've put on the table. We're going to be making a big announcement here in the next couple weeks about the next steps we're taking to address California's presidential primary. The second thing you can do is to start being aware that there are a growing number of groups out there, and find one locally. There's organizations like Represent Us and Fair Vote, and a lot of groups around the country that are starting to talk about these issues. So reach out, get involved. And the other thing, start talking to your family, your friends, and your legislators, is saying, this is something I care about. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has to do with the quality of our representation. And if we have this frustration, we should be looking to that first.
Chad, thanks for coming. You know, we often blame politicians, but really the blame, we get the government we vote for, right?
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, Chad, peace.